for this afternoon, I'll be tackling new criticism, which is the first literary approaches that we'll be tackling. So, pinili ko lang yung, there are plenty of literary approaches, but I will be focusing on those commonly used literary approaches. So, we will be discovering bakit ba new criticism ang tawag dito? Ano ba yung pinaghugutan nito? Ano ba yung pinanggalingan nito? So, we'll be having a brief fast track or a fast track of the historical development of new criticism. So, new criticism is a name applied by varied and extremely energetic effort among Anglo-American writers to focus critical attention on literature itself. So, pinag-usapan natin Anglo-American. So, nanggaling ito sa Great Britain tsaka sa American. So, this is commonly devised by writers coming from England or coming from United Kingdom or Great Britain pa yung time na yon, and the American writers. So, they are the ones who devised this kind of way of analyzing literature. Okay, so bakit nila ito ginawa at ano ba yung pinaghugutan nila nito, ano ba yung pinanggalingan nito. Kaya meron tayong brief discussion of the historical development of this criticism. Okay, so pinanggalingan nito, sinasabi nila that it came from Russian formalism. So it follows the this the analysis done by Boris Eichenbaum and Viktor Chulovsky. So they are considered as the one of those people who developed Russian formalism. So meron silang different ways of analyzing literature. So from the term itself, formalism, so they are focusing more on the form of the literary works. Kung paano ginawa, the text itself. Kasi kung babalikan natin yung ating discussion on the historical development of literary criticism, um, si si sa Aristotle dun sa kanyang Poetics, 'di ba nag-focus siya sa form? Ano ba yung ano ba yung mga parts ng mga tragedy? So, isa siya sa mga tumingin doon. Pero si Plato, content ang tiningnan ni Plato. Okay? So nag-focus siya doon sa moral values, sa social values. So, and yung mga sumunod pa na mga literary critic just like Philip Sidney. So, tiningnan nila rin, focus nila is on the content, the social aspect, the psychological aspect, the psychosocial aspect. So, they are more of on the content. Medyo na may mention din naman nila ang forms, pero it's not given more emphasis. So for the Russian formalists, they're focusing more on the forms. So what made a literature works? Ano bang meron? So there's a need for them to study the 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 form of literature in order for them to really understand what's with the literature. Bakit ba siya gustong basahin ng mga mambabasa? Ano ba yung style na ginamit noong writer in order for them to develop that kind of literary works? So for them, that is very important aspect of literature which should not be set aside. Hence, there are some instances wherein they rejected those that are specified by early critics. Yung mga sinabi ko sa inyo katulad ng social, psychosocial. So those content, medyo nasiset aside nila kasi they're after with the subjectivity. For them, if you're focusing on the content of the literature according to the Russian formalist, it is more of objective. If it's objective, it is not scientific. Di ba, pag sinabi natin scientific, may proseso kang sinusundan in order for you to arrive a certain conclusion. And for them, they really have this kind of issue or concern with the way those previous literary critics delve into the literature. So, ito yung tingnan natin. So, kaya sabi rito, the new critics develop speculative positions on techniques of reading that provide a vital complement to the literary and artistic emergence of modernism. Okay, so Roman Jacobson and Rene Walick. So these are Russian formalists, and they went to the U.S. and they participated on the discussion of the new critics. So they are part of those people who, excuse me, who who help them in conceptualizing what then will be the new criticism is all about. So kaya siya tinawag na new critics kasi they um, they reinvented Russian formalism. Okay, they reinvented Russian formalism. Now,
So,
focus ay
the
on interaction of this Russian formalist with the new critics thus evidence itself in some of Russian formalism's ideas being mirrored in new critical principles. Ito yung sinasabi ko na um, may at some point may impluwensya ang mga Russian formalists sa pagbuo ng isang new critical principles. Kasi pag sinabi nating Russian formalism, uh, nandun sila sa may tinatawag silang defamiliarization. Mamaya i-discuss ko ano ba yung defamiliarization na yan. Okay. So, balikan natin ng bahagya ang Russian formalism para makita natin yung pinag-ugatan noong new criticism. So, it is a school of literary theory and analysis that emerged in Russia around 1915. Ito yung binabanggit ko sa inyo that the lens of looking at literature should be somehow scientific. So sila nagsabi na it aimed to devise a general science of literature by looking at structures and systematics of literary forms. So um, sabi nila if you're going to study, if you're going to dissect literary works, it has to focus on a lot of elements. Let's say paano ba binuo? Ano ba yung sukat, bilang, o yung rhyme scheme? So, biographical, social, political, or cultural context are not important in the critical process. Ito yung binabanggit ko sa inyo kanina na at some point they rejected this biographical, social, political, or cultural context. Pag sinabi kasi nating biographical, if you are a literary critic, you're focusing on analyzing a particular literary works based on the background of the author. Okay? So, based on the background of the author, yung analysis mo ay dun mo binabase. Kesyo, nasaktan itong author, kaya niya nasulat ito. Pero sa kanila, it does not always follow. Diba? Means there are some instances wherein we just write out of nowhere, we just spill our own tea. We spill our tea, we spill our ideas out of nowhere, wherein hindi naman talaga natin experience yon. So, sabi nila, that's why they rejected the concept of basing your analysis according to the author's background. Although meron tayong tinatawag na historicism, new historicism sa literary criticism, or kumbaga sa film, kung tawagin natin yung auteur theory, um, kung saan it depends on the backgrounds of the author where we make an interpretation of a text. So sabi nila, it does not always follow. Okay? Social, political, the social, say Marxism, political Marxism, cultural context, so eco-critical. So they're not focusing on those things because they're focused on the form of literature rather than its content. Yan pa lang. You will already get an idea dyan. They focus on the form of literature rather than its content. So they emphasize the difference between literary language and non-literary practical language that aims at communicating information, because they believe that if we are focusing our interpretation on biographical, social, political, or cultural context, our biases might occur. Pero kaya nga ang sinusulong kasi nila how to make scientific. Okay, in order to attain that scientific scheme in analyzing literature, then there's a need for them to go on with the forms. Okay, so the Russian formalists pushed back against the 19th century notion amongst Russian critics that art, or specifically literature, was something mysterious, full of symbolism and poetic marvels waiting to be deciphered. Okay, so they are this is one thing that they're rejecting as well, yung symbolism and the poetic parables. Okay, kasi symbols can be interpreted by many. So my interpretation of a certain symbol might be different on your interpretation. Kaya dito papasok pag nandun na tayo kay Carl Jung, yung kanyang archetypal motif. archetypal motif na full of symbolisms, yung archetypal motif, sabihin natin, aba, magkaaway itong Russian formalism tsaka itong si Carl Jung. New criticism was a theoretical school that focused on interpreting and critically engaging in a self-sufficient text, independent of all outside factors. Pag sinabi natin independent of all outside factors, ito yung nabanggit ko kanina, biographical, social, cultural. So it does not, those aspects did not or does not or should not influence the literary critic. So this approach to literary analysis provides the reader with a formula for arriving at the correct interpretation of a text using only the text itself. So, ano ba pinagkaiba ng new criticism kay Russian formalism? So, sa new criticism, kasi naging very specific siya. Hindi katulad ni Russian formalism na broad ang idea niya of analyzing a particular text, a particular form. So, kumbaga sa isang literature, hindi siya ganun ka-polish when it comes to analyzing. Kasi kung poetry yan, tinitingnan lang nila yan in general context. Halimbawa, ilan ang sukat, ano ba yung mga words. Sa new criticism, inayos nila. Halimbawa, ano ba yung mga elements ng poetry? Rhyme, yun sinundan nila. Okay, yun yung sinundan nila. Kung ang ina-analyze mo ay drama, anong elements of drama? Because those elements of literary genre will serve as your basis of the analysis. So, kaya dapat alam niyo yung elemento ng bawat literary genre or literary work. Alam mo kung short story yan, ano ba yung mga elements ng short story? We have the characters, the plot, the setting, the theme, the image, the figures of speech. Okay, so yung simpleng ginagawa ninyo kapag kayo gumagawa ng book report, parang ganun. Kaya nga lang, mas malalim ang pagtingin at pag-unawa. Okay? Kasi nga, titingnan nyo, paano ba ginawa? Okay? Epektibo ba yung pagkakagawa bilang isang literary critic? Maayos ba yung pagkakahalayhay ng mga salita sa tingin sa inyong pagkakaunawa? So, just like Russian formalism, senior criticism rejected the same thing. Kasi nga, di ba, yun yung kanilang pinagkunan ng inspirasyon. So, new critics reject the emphasis on author biographies, as well as historical context, both of which were widely used in their time. Ang pinakang reject talaga na, we have the so-called intentional fallacy. Okay? Kapag pinag-usapan natin ang new criticism, there is a rejection of the intentional fallacy. Pag sinabi natin fallacy, ito yung mistakes. Okay? Sa logic, di ba, fallacy means mistakes, yung mali. Okay? So, intentional fallacy, the mistaken belief that the author's intention is the same as the text meaning. Hindi porke ganun yung sinabi ng author sa kanyang text, ganun na rin yung gusto niyang iparating sa atin. So, it only tells us that what the purpose of the author might be misinterpreted, that there might be a tendency na hindi naman talaga yung intention niya, that there's a possibility that we might take the intention differently from the intention of the author. Okay? So, yung tinatawag natin intentional fallacy, na yung intention ng author ay iba pala doon sa interpretation natin ng intention niya. Okay? So, there's always a possibility that might happen. So that is the first fallacy in terms of new criticism. Then we have affective fallacy, the misconception that arises from judging a poem by the emotional effect that it produces in the reader. It argues that the reader's response to a poem is the ultimate indication of its value. Hindi porke lahat ay, let's say, naiyak doon sa binasang tula or binasang stories, masasabi na natin na valuable or maganda yung isang literary works. Okay? Hindi porke lahat tayo ay natawa doon sa pinasa natin, hindi basehan yon para masabi natin na maganda na yung literary works. Hindi porke na itawid sa atin yung emosyon ay masasabi natin na maganda yung pagkakagawa sa isang tula o sa isang literary works. Yun yung tinatawag ng affective fallacy, that we should not only base the the analysis according to its emotional effect. Hence, there is still a need for us to look at how it is made. So, kasi sa mga new critics, mahalaga kung paano ba siya ginawa. Parang halimbawa lang to pag nanonood kayo ng Metro Manila Film Festival. Okay? Dahil ba maraming natawa sa gawa ng mga pelikula nila ni Vice Ganda at maraming nanood, masasabi na natin ba na maganda yung pelikula? Kumpara doon sa isang pelikula, let's say, ni Nora Honor, na kasabay no kay Vice Ganda, na iilan lang yung mga, or yung kay John Lloyd Cruz, na iilan lang yung mga nanood. Kukunti lang yung mga nanood. Parang ganun din sa emotional effect. So, hindi porke marami yung naiyak, masasabi na nating maganda yun. Or marami yung natuwa, magsasabi nating maganda na yun. No. So, sa mga new critics, it's still the form that matters. Kung paano ba siya ginawa. Okay? So, ngayon, ano ba yung pinaghuhugutan nila ng form? Ang mga new critics, meron yung mga standard. Okay? So, meron silang standard na tinitingnan. Halimbawa, ang bilang ba ay tama? Kapag binabasa mo ba, may ritmo? Yun yung mga tinitingnan nila. Yung mga choice of words ba, diction, choice of words. Yung diction ba, yung choice of words ba, ay akma. Tinitingnan nila yon. New criticism aims, ito yung pinakang main objective nila, to appreciate text on their own. They believe that a critic must investigate how a work creates meaning within itself, because it has governing principles that deserve to be analyzed. And only those who are knowledgeable of forms and styles can tell if that certain works are effective or not effective. Again, nakakahon sila sa struktura. Critics need to pay attention to how the elements come together to create literature with a meaning. Ito yung kanina ko pang nababanggit sa inyo, yung mga elements of literature. So, dapat particular kayo doon sa elements of the prose and the poetry. And you are particular with, although it's very difficult to identify the anapest, the trochee, the ayam. So, then bibilangan mo kung kapag ikaw pa ay medyo hirap at mahina ang pandindig sa pag-a-analyze kung yan ba ay ayam or trochee, kasi stress and unstress syllable ang pinag-uusapan natin dito. So if you're particular with where the stress falls, 'di ba, sa isang literature, it will be easier for you to identify. Let's say stress, unstress, stress, ayam. Stress, unstress, trochee. Tapos bibilangin mo pa kung ilang syllables. Okay, yung ba iambic pentameter, iambic hexameter, yung ba iambic octameter, yung ba iambic dodecameter. Okay, so with that, its advantage is that you will understand the style of the author. Halimbawa, pinag-aralan mo lahat ng mga works ng isang author, that from that you will be identify, ganito pala siya magsulat. Hence, best example for that is Shakespeare. How Shakespeare made his sonnet perfect in such a way that if you're going to study Shakespeare, 'di ba, iambic pentameter lagi si Shakespeare. Mapapasin nyo lang kasi medyo nababago na yung tunog kasi nga na-modernize na yung English nung pinag-aaralan natin ngayon. Pero kung pag-aaralan talaga is the original language, yung Old English ni Shakespeare, doon natin marirealize yung sinasabing iambic pentameter nung ka Shakespeare. But looking at Shakespeare's work, let's say disregarding the rhyme scheme, we can say na the first 12 lines of Shakespeare has something to do with the background story, and the last two lines are the so-called climax and ending in one. Okay, the climax and the ending. which is unlike with the style of uh, Petrarch. So sa Petrarch naman ay kung si Shakespeare ay 12-2, si Petrarch naman ay iba. Siya ay I think 8-6 8-6 si Petrarch. Yung first 8 lines, nandun yung kanyang background, and the remaining 6 lines, nandun na yung kanyang ending at nandun yung kanyang conclusion. So, see, if we are going to focus on the the forms, and then pag-aralan mo yung iba't ibang mga writers and how they wrote and how they write, then you can tell na ganito pala siya magsulat. Okay, that's one of the benefits of using the forms. Okay, so napapag-aralan natin yung mga styles na pwede nating i-apply sa sarili mismo natin kung gusto nating gayahin. Kaya 'di ba, yung ibang mga nagsusulat ngayon, what they did is they get inspiration from others' works because unconsciously they are already applying formalism. They are already applying new criticism kung paano ba dinevise yung mga characters. So mapapansin nyo, ito na lang, basic example, there was a period wherein sa mga teleserye, naging trend talaga yung ang tema ay tungkol sa mga kabit-kabit. At kung pagtitingnan ninyo at pagtatabi-tabihin nyo yung mga kwento nila, halos pare-pareho na mga plot. Okay? Siguro yung mga writer, they get inspiration from K-drama and then they translate that inspiration to Philippine setting, and then bigla na lang na nag-ugat. So little they know, they are unconsciously already applying formalism kasi kinokopya nila yung form. Mapapansin nyo rin yung trend ng mga palabas natin ngayon, mga before, halimbawa na lang natin is bakit ba ganun na lang ka ka-hype yung pag-aarte ng mga artista natin nung mga 90s. Kasi nga, we are dominated by Mexican novelas, by Latin dramas, sila Talia, Rosalinda. Okay? So, yun yung mga pinanggalingan. Tapos, papasin nyo, yung mga panahon, yung kasagsagan, noong uso pa yung mga Latin na yan, mga telenovelas na yan coming from Mexico. So, yung mga teleserye natin sa Philippines, halos katulad na rin, pati yung mga plot twist, okay? Mga setting, parang katulad na rin. And then yung the manner in which the actors attack their character, similar na rin. So, parang ganun, that is an implication. I'm not saying that that is a direct approach of new criticism, but that is somehow an implication of the importance of studying the form and the style. That we can imitate that to reinvent something. Kaya nakita kasi natin na, oh, maganda pala yung ganitong form, maganda pala yung ganitong style. Then, if we are the writer, then we can also apply the same input that they do. So, getting that concept in literature, kapag meron kayo nakitang writer na ganito magsulat, sinusundan nyo. Okay? Now, spoken word poetry, isa pa yan. Pag tabi-tabihin mo ang spoken word poetry, nakikita mo that may pattern. Merong pattern ng form. Tabi-tabihin mo sila. Okay? So, yung pabago-bago ng yung paglaro sa mga salita na binabali-baliktad, ayan, na yung ibang mga nagsusulat ng spoken word poetry, ginagaya na rin nila. Okay, so, these people, unconsciously, these people who are into imitating others' work, unconsciously, they are already imbibing the concept of new criticism. After all, that's one of the importance of new criticism. The way I look at it, that's one of the advantages of utilizing new criticism, because it helps in terms of developing styles, developing forms, and with that, nagkakaroon ng mga reinvention of literary forms. Okay? So, kaya napansin nyo rito, new critics also pay attention to formal elements in the work such as narrative voice, the setting, the plot, and the word choice, or diction. When we talk of diction, we're pertaining to the choice of words. Okay, so I mentioned of you a while ago about defamiliarization. So defamiliarization was term was a term coined by Shklovsky. Yung na-mention ko kanina, by Shklovsky. Okay, so ang term nito ay galing sa Russia, sa Russian formalism. So ano ba ang defamiliarization? So in literature, literature is written in literary language, which is deliberate and different from everyday language, and defamiliarizes objects. So when we talk of defamiliarization, it is the way figurative language changes how we view the world around us, making ordinary occurrences unfamiliar again, making the ordinary extraordinary. So, so kumbaga, gumagamit, bagaman medyo nadadib, nare-reject nila ang symbolisms, pero ang Russian formalism, they are into embracing figurative language, and with figurative language, functioning functioning perfectly, or functioning creatively into transferring the message in a more creative way. So, halimbawa ng defamiliarization, ito. So, makikita ninyo yung structure ng Mang Teban and the Weather. I don't know if you notice this kind of structure in Mang Teban and the Weather, and looking these two stanzas side by side. So, the word defamiliarization was reproduced from the word ostraneni, meaning making strange, or making strange meaning, or a more poetic meaning of a certain one. So, as devils on to a stage of fire and shaft in the salty air, and wish for rainy days, as jobless dancing in the mire and shrunk in the pelting rain, and wished for sunny days. So, if we're just going to be literal on this, sinasabi lang natin na, okay, Magteban want rainy days. Okay, uh, Magteban want sunny days. If we're be literal, what's with the devil here, and what's with the Diablo here? Okay, so, however, they are not only pertaining to the literal devil or the Diablo that we know, kaanib ni Satanas. Hindi, that's not the one. So, kinakarakterize niya yung init into, para kang raw nasa impyerno. Okay, parang yung feeling mo raw nasa impyerno. Si Joshua siguro nakapunta na sa impyerno, kaya nasabi niya as devils onto stage of fire. Okay, di ba ganun sinasabi ng iba? Pag sinasabi ng iba na, grabe ang init, parang impyerno. O bakit nakapunta ka na ba sa impyerno? Di ba? Mayroon tayong mga ganong pahagi. Well, anyway, this should not be taken denotatively. It has to be taken connotatively. Okay, so taking it in a figurative way. Okay, so ito lang yung ibig sabihin ng defamiliarization, na we have to, although we use terms, we use words that are quite quite not real to use, or not practical to use, in a way na gagamitin mo siya in casual conversation, pero in poetry, it gives us, or it delivers us, a different experience, a different meaning of the words. Katulad yung paggamit niya ng devil tsaka Diablo. So, makita mo kung papaano niya talaga, ayoko nang ulitin yung term na devil, Diablo na lang. Pagsinin nyo rin kung magpapaka-stylistics tayo rito. Yung style of writing, style and linguistics. As devils onto a stage of fire. Side by side with as jobless dancing in the mire. So, parang pareho, di ba, yung sentence structure. And shaft and shrunk in the salty air, in the salty air, in the pelting rain. And wish for rainy days, for sunny days. So, side by side, looking at it. But aside from that, it is the choice of words that transmit a different feeling, or a different meaning, that makes sense on the essence of the comparison between the wants of Mang Teban to have rain and to have sunny day. The contentment that Mang Teban I think it likes the exploration of Mang Teban's contentment, and Mang Teban representing Filipinos na walang kakontentuhan sa buhay. The toxic Filipino culture, the toxic Filipino attitude of having no contentment in life. I think that is the reality that Joshua see at want to slap among the Filipinos, which is still prevalent up to now. Okay? Only intelligent people can understand the concept kung naunawaan talaga. If not, kung naunawaan man nila at hindi nila tinanggap, ang tawag sa kanila ay hypocrite. Kaya favorite ko talaga tong Mang Teban and the Weather. Okay. So, moving on. New critics believe that everything in a work of literature is carefully calculated to contribute to the unity of the work. So from the title, from the choice of words, from the arrangement of words, from the sentence structure, from the rhyme, from the meter, kahit pa sabihin natin yan ay free verse, may sinusundan pa rin po tayong ritmo. Okay, dapat hindi awkward ang pagkakakat ng mga words. Kahit free verse yan, meron pa rin tayong ritmo na sinusundan eh. Para kasi yung kanta na dapat tama ang pagkakahati, na dapat maramdaman mo yung tono noong iyong binabasa. And that is the job of the critic to explain this unity. So, kayo, bilang pag kayo magsusulat na ng literary criticism using formalist approach, titingnan nyo, may unity ba yung mga elements. Halimbawa, sa isang short story, ang characterization ba niya, let's say bata, kung magsalita, matanda, na hindi naman angkop doon sa kanyang edad. Ayan, pwede nyo gamitin yon. You're already applying literary criticism in that aspect. Halimbawa, yung choice of words niya, yung sultry, hindi mo pala akma doon sa text. Pwede mong punain yun. Okay? So, yun yung trabaho ninyo. Okay, halimbawa ito. Words, phrases, sentences, images, tones, among others, are cohesively presented in Mang Teban and the Weather. Although we can say na in terms of meter, iba-iba eh. Bilangin natin yung first line. 1 April noon when all was bright. So that is 8. Second line. And clear and dazzling to the sight. 8. Beside the road Mang Teban stood. Pwede natin pilitin stood, pero is stood. Shwa kasi yung S, so hindi natin siya i-count. Stood. So 8 pa rin siya. Wiping his face in sullen mood. 8. He saw the heat waves in the glare. 8. Octameter. As devils onto a stage. Fire. It's 9. And shaft in the sultry air. That's 7. And wish for rainy days. That's 6. Parang may pattern, no? 8, 7, 6. So, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, lahat sila ay 8. Pagdating kay devils on stage of as devils on to stage fire, it's 8. And shaft in the sultry air, 7. And wish for it, that's 6. So 8, 7, 6 pagdating dito sa kanyang last 3 lines. Then patingnan natin dito sa second stanza. Then when salt sold at treble price, that's 8. Tingnan natin para may nagko-comment. Basahin natin. 8876. Yes, tama ka dyan, Sheila. 8876. And muddy pools, smack cloudy skies. That's 8. Mang Teban passing, tripping trees. That's 8. With trousers rolled up to his knees. That's 8. reproached the sky and saw the rain. That's 8. As jobless dancing in the mire. That's 8. And shrunk in the pelting rain. 7. And wished for sunny days. That's 8. So you see how perfectly nakuha niya yung, kung di kayo particular sa rhyme, makikita nyo yung pattern ni Joshua Ramsey dito, na the first the first 5 or 6 lines ay 8. 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 6, 7. The same with the second stanza. So, coherent. May cohesiveness on that aspect. Now, let's look at the rhyme. Bright sight AA. Stood mood BB. Glare, fire, glare RR. Pwede ng CC. And air D. AA, BB. Nakukuha nyo ba? For sure, particular naman kayo rito, no? AA, BB, CC, D, and E. Okay? Yan yung kanyang rhyme scheme. Dito ay price, skies, AA, trees, sneeze, BB, rain. Dito medyo nawala. The rain, mire. Rain, day. So, medyo nawala siya rito sa part na to. Okay? So, 1 April noon, 1 April, so that unstressed is stressed. 1 April noon when all was bright, so that is I am. So therefore we can conclude that it is in general, it is iambic octameter following the AA, BB, CC, DD, EF scheme. Okay? So it makes sense on the analysis na masasabi natin na this is how coherent the work ng Teban and the Weather is in terms of the form. Okay, see, I'm just giving you the idea on how to analyze the cohesiveness of the structure. It's very important. Why? Because of, again, you can see how call this I don't know the right term for that. Para siyang gaano siya kameticuloso, yan, meticulous in terms of the meter, the rhyme, and then the structure of the poem. Besides, it makes sense because gusto niyo pakita yung contrasting idea of the rain and the sun. If you are showing the contrasting idea of the rain and the sun, the rainy day and the sunny day, the wishing for rainy day and wishing for sunny day, it makes sense. Okay? Parang binalanse mo, hindi lamang doon sa konsepto. Binalanse mo rin siya in terms doon sa form. Okay? In all great works of literature, there is complexity or multiple and conflicting meanings running through the text. That is very evident in Mang Teban and the Weather. So, conflicting meanings. Yung una, diba sabi niya, mainit ang panahon. Sige, gusto ko naman na umulan. Nung uminit naman, gusto naman niya na umulan. 'Di ba? Walang contentment sa buhay. Filipino toxic attitude. The point. So new critics must examine how their unifying theme holds any opposing elements together. So there are two opposing terms here. Holds tapos oppose, 'di ba? So, new critics must examine how their unifying themes, that despite of the opposing ideas that are reflected in the literature, still, there has to be a unifying idea that would hold them. Besides, it's the differences that makes unity more exciting. Diba? It's the differences that make love more exciting. The same way with it's the differences or the opposing ideas, the contrasting ideas in literary works that make a literature more exciting. Okay? How to analyze literature using new criticism? First, examine the text diction. So when we talk of diction, it's the choice of word. You can consider denotations, the denotative meaning, the denotata, or the meaning coming from the dictionary, or the connotations, the interpretative meaning of a word, and etymological roots, yung pinanggalingan ng words, in the text. You can make use of that as part of examining the diction. Examine all allusions. When we talk of allusions, meron tayong tinatawag na may tinatawag na biographical allusions, biblical allusion. So, tracing the roots. Saan ba pinanggalingan ng konsepto? Analyze all images, symbols. Ayan, pwede niya tingnan yung symbols. Kahit kinokontra yan ng Russian formalist, pero ang mga new critics, they are embracing symbols and figures of speech within the text. So you can identify the different figures of speech, then interpret it and analyze. Ano ba yung relationship ng mga figures of speech na ito? It's not only just presenting the different figures of speech, but also the essence of figures of speech. Just like yung isa sa mga palasak ng tula, yung kay Joyce Kilmer na Trees, pero talagang napaka useful niya in order for us to understand the literature. Yung, I think that I shall never see a poem loveless, a true anger mouth is pressed against earth's with flowing breast. Okay, so it's more personification, diba? Pinakita sa atin yung isang puno, yung kay Joyce Kilmer, na ang puno parang tao rin, may buhay. Tapos sa bandang dulo, nandun yung pinaka kinokonsensya nyo tayo. Examine and analyze the various patterns that appear within the text. Katulad yung ginawa natin kanina, nakita nyo yung patterns, yung ginawa natin kay Mang Teban, yun yung sinatawag nating aspects of prosody. Okay, yung rhyme, meter, rhythm, and so forth. With H, nakalimutan lang yung H. Okay, so, yung diniscuss ko, yung pinakita ko sa inyo example kanila kung paano ko inanalyze yung Mang Teban and the weather. Yun, that's an application of prosody. So, yung prosody kasi, yan yung term na ma-encounter ninyo kapag kayo mag-aaral ng stylistics. So, na-mention ang prosody. So, note how the poet manipulates metrical devices, the grammatical construction, the tonal patterns, the syntactic patterns, yung sentence construction of words, the phrases, the clauses, or the sentences, and determine how these various patterns interrelate with each other. So, makita nyo yung estilo ng isang writer. So, consider the elements used in the literary work, let's say, tone, theme, point of view, in other element, dialogue, foreshadowing, narration. We have the parody, the setting, and so forth, that directly relate to the text dramatic situation, and then look for the interrelationships of all the elements. After carefully examining all of the above, state the poem's chief overarching tensions and explain how the poem or literature achieves its dominant effect by resolving this tension.